So good afternoon, Excellencies, distinguished delegates and colleagues, and those joining us online. Welcome to the launch of the United Nations Disability Inclusion Strategy 2.0, celebrating progress, accelerating action on disability inclusion across the United Nations. My name is Karima Al-Khoury, and I'm the Director of the Sustainable Development Unit in the Executive Office of the Secretary General, and I am honored to moderate today's session. It is a great pleasure to welcome all of you joining us today, both here in Conference Room 4 and virtually from around the world. Before we begin, please note that international sign interpretation and captioning are available for this session. We ask that all speakers use their microphones so that our interpreters online can hear clearly. We also cordially invite you to a reception and refreshments just outside this room after the event. It is my honor to welcome the Deputy Secretary General of the United Nations, Ms. Amina Mohammed, to deliver opening remarks. Deputy SG, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Karima, Your Excellency, Honourable Minister of the Presidency, Women, Youth and People with Disabilities of the Republic of South Africa, Lydia Chigunga, Excellencies, colleagues and friends, and particularly all our friends online. And let me start by saying, as well done. I would like to welcome all of you here today, and especially those whose lived experience has guided our work on the rights of people and persons with disabilities. This room holds decades of determination, advocates who would not be silenced, champions of inclusion who come back year after year to demand that the UN be what it promises to be. We hear you, and we have been taking action. This 19th session of the Conference of the State Parties on the Convention of the Rights of Persons with Disabilities is an opportunity to renew our ambition for the next 5 years. That includes today's launch of UNDIS 2.0 as the next chapter of the United Nations Disability Inclusion Strategy. It is a bold reaffirmation from the top of this institution that the commitment to transform is unshakable. To live with a disability is to live in a world where barriers are built into our institutions and, more importantly, into our attitudes. That is what the Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities set out to change 20 years ago. The question it puts to us is not about how persons with disabilities should adapt to the world as it is, but how the world must change so every person can live with dignity and with autonomy. 2 decades on, national laws have been rewritten, and societies have slowly begun to think differently about who belongs. An estimated 1.3 billion members of our human family experience disability. 80% live in the global south. The United Nations cannot ask of the world what it has not been willing to demand of itself. If we are to stand with persons with disabilities everywhere, we must first look inward and lead by example. And this is what we are trying. In 2019, the Secretary General launched our Disability Inclusion Strategy. For years, there were rooms in this building that colleagues with disabilities could not get into, and meetings and communications that were inaccessible. Too often, our own people were absent when crucial decisions were made. UNDIS was the first time we made ourselves accountable. The very first time every part of this system had to answer the question, what was it doing on disability inclusion? 7 years on, it's time to ask, where are we now? Well, it depends on where you look. In 2019, less than 1/5 of the standards we set ourselves were being met. Today, we're meeting over half. It's not enough. In parts of this organization, where it was once an afterthought, disability inclusion has become a central part of the conversation. New hiring practices and the tools that make participation possible in our buildings and on our screens are bringing more persons with disabilities into our workforce, including in decision-making positions. But we're still not there yet. Investment in accessibility still falls short. The amazing colleagues with disabilities working in our country teams have pushed our systems to be more inclusive and accessible, yet too few persons with disabilities work for the United Nations. And we know what that means. The people who understand the barriers best are too often not in the room when decisions are being taken that affect their lives. Across the programs we run, disability inclusion is still not mainstreamed. We have written a great deal of guidance and held many, many meetings, but for many of our colleagues, it has not yet changed to the day-to-day experience. With less than 5 years to deliver on the Sustainable Development Goals, this is a shortfall that we cannot afford. UNDIS 2.0 pushes us to do better. It carries us from policies and tools towards results and impact. It puts partnerships with organizations of persons with disabilities at the center of how we work. It builds the expertise we have been missing, so disability inclusion is embedded in our programs that we run and the support we give to member states as they in turn the convention into law and practice. Every part of this system will be held to account. UNDIS 2.0 opens opportunities for transformative change at the country level. Only by integrating disability inclusion in the SDGs can we truly leave absolutely no one behind. This does mean inclusive food systems, equitable access to affordable clean energy, accessible digital connectivity by design. It means inclusive quality education for all and access to decent work and social protection. As we confront climate change, biodiversity loss and pollution, persons with disabilities must be part of designing resilience and sustainability. Excellencies and friends, like the Conference of Stater Parties itself, UNDIS 2.0 is a reminder that we did not get here on our own. Today belongs to the people who made this work possible, to the organizations of persons with disabilities in this room, and to those of you that are watching us around the world. You have pushed us, you put fire under our feet, you have reminded us that inclusion is not a favor granted by institutions, but it is a right. And we are a better institution because of you. But we cannot do the work ahead alone. We need member states to legislate, and we also need funding. We also need civil society to continue to keep up the pressure. And through it all, we need persons with disabilities leading the way, shaping their future. Today, UNDIS 2.0 sets us on a path to becoming the United Nations, the Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities envisages, the UN with its own house in order, and the United Nations that every person with a disability deserves. And I'd like to end with a particular note of appreciation, deep appreciation to the team that we have in our office in the AOSG. Mina, I think I can see you around the corner there. They are amazing people, and I'd love that you give them applause, because without them, we'll not be seen. Thank you. Yes, okay, thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Secretary General, for your remarks, inspiring as always. Next, I am pleased to welcome Her Excellency, Minister Lydia Sindiswe Chikunga, Minister in the Presidency for Women, Youth and People with Disabilities of the Republic of South Africa, to deliver the keynote address.
Thank you, Facilitator. Thank you very much, Facilitator. Distinguished panelists, delegates, ladies and gentlemen. South Africa greatly appreciates the opportunity to join hands with our partners in advancing the aims of the United Nations Disability Inclusion Strategy, a strategy that provides the foundation for sustainable and transformative progress on disability inclusion. We are pleased to join hands with the government of the Kingdom of Lesotho, Austria, Costa Rica, Finland, Poland, and China, as well as the International Disability Alliance in making this side event possible. Today's event reaffirms what is possible when we take collective and decisive measures at the multilateral level to promote and protect the rights of persons with disabilities and to ensure their full, equal, and meaningful participation in all aspects of society. South Africa has consistently promoted an effective and inclusive multilateral system capable of breaking the barriers to inclusive development. We remain committed to advancing diversity, equality, and inclusion within the United Nations and beyond. This commitment is consistent with the critical role we have played in supporting a UN-wide system that promotes the deliberate empowerment of women, youth, and persons with disabilities in all spheres of life. In this regard, we are deeply honored to be part of this launch of the revised United Nations Disability Inclusion Strategy 2.0, an important framework for responding to current and emerging global challenges while advancing disability inclusion through 2030. The United Nations must continue to lead by example. The adoption of the UNDIS in 2019 marked a significant milestone in advancing disability inclusion across all pillars of the UN's work. 7 years later, the impact of the strategy is evident. An inclusive United Nations is better positioned to support member states in implementing the Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities and the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. We commend the UN system's commitment to accountability through annual reporting under the strategy. At the same time, we recognize that further efforts are required to strengthen accountability and implementation at the level of UN country teams. Chairperson, while we acknowledge the progress achieved globally, significant challenges remain. Persons with disabilities continue to face multiple and intersecting barriers in accessing education, healthcare, employment, social protection, and participation in decision-making processes. These challenges are often compounded by poverty, by inequality, by conflict, and by other humanitarian crises. As we commemorate the 20th anniversary of the CRPD, the launch of the 2.0 provides us with an opportunity to renew our commitment to a multilateral system that is fit for purpose. A strengthened and inclusive United Nations can facilitate enhanced international cooperation, support capacity building, and improve the collection of disaggregated data necessary to advance disability inclusive development. The United Nations should further strengthen a culture of accessibility and ensure that persons with disabilities are actively involved in the design, implementation, and evaluation of the policies and programs that affect their lives. South Africa supports the UN-aid initiatives and the establishment and the established intergovernmental efforts to reform the United Nations while safeguarding the gains made in advancing the rights of persons with disabilities. In this regard, consideration should be given to elevating UNDIS to the level of the often under Secretary General-led office. Such a step would strengthen its visibility, its autonomy, and its institutional capacity, enabling it to further advance disability inclusion across the United Nations system, alongside other dedicated UN entities and offices. I thank you very much.
Thank you, Your Excellency, for your remarks. Thank you for your full support, and we welcome it and appreciate it. Next, I would like to welcome Mr. Juan Angel de Gouveia, Vice President of the International Disability Alliance. Mr. Juan Angel, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Chair. The International Disability Alliance is honored to speak at this high-level launch of the UNDIS 2.0. We speak today on behalf of a movement of more than 5,500 organizations of persons with disabilities around the world. For many of them, the United Nations remain one of the largest resources of hope and expectation. It is where persons with disabilities look when national systems fail, when rights are denied, when conflict, poverty, inaccessible service, and exclusion makes daily life so much harder than it should be. That's why UNDIS matters so deeply. It is a key part of the human rights architecture of the United Nations. The IDA is proud to have been part of this journey from the beginning. We have worked with the UN system because we know that when the UN changes, the world changes with it. we want to warmly thank the remarkable UNDIS team, especially Mina Mothahedi and Megan Smith for their leadership, persistence, and integrity. This work is not easy, and the world is not easy. But the importance and impact is clear to the persons with disabilities everywhere. We are deeply appreciative of the personal and professional commitment of the Secretary General and the Deputy Secretary General. Their leadership has mattered so much, and we hope it continues, because change of this scale must start from the top. Senior leadership must hold its own system accountable. This is the only way that disability inclusion becomes an essential part of the way that UN understands its mandate. I must also be clear that consultation with the organization of persons with disabilities is a core CRPD principle and vital to the success of the UNDIS 2.0. As a representative organization reflecting the experience, political demands, and collective expertise and aspiration of persons with disabilities. Indeed, for us, this is the true limits test of UNDIS 2.0, the extent to which OPDs are consulted. Employee resource groups have an important role, but they cannot replace consultation with OPDs. We know resources are tight, but ambition is still possible and absolutely necessary. What we need is sustainable resourcing for the functions that drive change, strong monitoring and accountability across the system, and the highest level of political support for UNDIS 2.0. Without UNDIS, we cannot deliver the impact required. With a strong UNDIS 2.0, properly support and political back, the UN can help move disability inclusion from commitment to reality. This is why the UNDIS is so important for all of us, the persons with disability. We advocate to continue to have the UNDIS support and a better UNDIS within the UN system, to have this commitment for everyone. We, the IDA, stands ready to continue this partnership with honesty, urgency, and hope. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Gouveia, for your remarks. And I will remember from this many sentences, but you said when the UN changes, the world changes with it. And we do hope to be that motor for change. So thank you. And thank you, Deputy Secretary General. Thank you, Madam Minister. And thank you, Mr. Vice President, for sharing your valuable insights on how UNDIS 2.0 can accelerate progress on disability inclusion across the UN system and beyond. Your reflections highlighted both the opportunities and the practical steps needed to strengthen accountability, drive innovation, and ensure that no one is left behind. As we move to the next part of our program, I would like to thank you, speakers, and ask you to step down. And thank you again very much. And I would like to warmly welcome our next group of speakers to take their seats at the podium. Thank you very much, and we will allow 2 minutes for the podium change. We will continue our program now, and it is my pleasure to welcome the panelists in this second segment. Hello, how are you? Good to meet you. Hello, how are you? Good to see you. Daniel, bonjour. So as we continue this launch of the United Nations Disability Inclusion Strategy, it is my pleasure to welcome our next speaker, Ms. Heba Hagras, Special Rapporteur on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities. Ms. Hagras, you have the floor.
Just give me 1 second.
Of course. Take your time.
Okay. Excellencies, distinguished delegates, colleagues, and friends. It is an honor to join you today at this important moment as we launch UNDIS 2.0. At this time, when the global context presents both profound challenges and critical opportunities for advancing the rights of persons with disabilities. 20 years after the adoption of the Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities, we have achieved undeniable progress. Disability inclusion is no longer a marginal concern. It is firmly recognized as a central human rights, development, humanitarian, and peace-building priority. UNDIS has been instrumental in driving this transformation within the United Nations system, embedding accountability and fostering a culture of inclusion across policies and operations. And yet, we must be clear, persons with disabilities continue to be facing disproportionate and often compounding barriers worldwide. In today's global context, these challenges are intensifying. We are witnessing rising inequalities, protracted conflicts, climate emergencies, and rapid technological changes, all of which have distinguished and often amplified impacts on persons with disabilities. In humanitarian settings, persons with disabilities remain among the most excluded, facing barriers to accessing life-saving assistance. In development, persistent gaps in education, employment, and social protection continue to deny full participation. In many societies, stigma and discrimination remains deeply entrenched. At the same time, digital transformation, while holding great promises, risks creating new forms of exclusion of accessibility, which is to be built on top of the problems that exists. And across all these domains, the lack of reliable disaggregated data continues to obscure the lives and realities of persons with disabilities, limiting the effectiveness of policies and programs. This is why UNDIS 2.0 is both timely and essential. UNDIS 2.0 must serve not only as a framework for internal UN reform, but as a catalyst for transformative change at country level. It must help translate commitment into measurable improvements in the lives of persons with disabilities everywhere. Allow me to highlight 3 key directions that, in my view, are essential for shaping the future through UNDIS 2.0. First, from progress to impact. We have made important strides in establishing policies and systems. The next phase must focus on results. UNDIS 2.0 must drive consistent, system-wide delivery that leads to tangible changes, greater access to services, increased participation in decision-making, and improved realization of rights. This requires stronger accountability, but also adequate and sustainable resourcing. Second, from inclusion to co-creation. Meaningful participation of persons with disabilities and their representative organizations must remain at the heart of all efforts. UNDIS 2.0 rightly reinforces partnership with organizations of persons with disabilities. We must go further, ensuring that persons with disabilities are not only consulted, but actively shape policies, programs, and in monitoring progress at all levels. Third, from fragmentation to intersectionality and cohesion. The reality of persons with disabilities are different and diversified. Women and girls with disabilities, persons with disabilities in conflict setting, indigenous persons with disabilities, and other at the intersection of multiple forms of discrimination face distinct challenges. UNDIS 2.0 must enable more nuanced intersectional approaches while ensuring coherence across the UN system and aligning with broader agendas, including the 2030 Development Agenda. In addition, I strongly welcome the emphasis in UNDIS 2.0 on digital accessibility, disability data, and resource tracking. These are not technical add-ons. They are fundamental enablers of accountability and impact. Excellencies, at a time of a global strain on multilateralism, disability inclusion can and must be a unified agenda. It reminds us of our shared commitment to dignity, equality, and human rights to all. UNDIS 2.0 offers us an opportunity to renew that commitment, to raise our ambition, to close persistent gaps, and to ensure that no person with a disability is left behind. Let us seize the moment not only to celebrate progress, but to accelerate action with urgency, with partnerships, and with determination. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hagras, for your statement and for highlighting the ownership, the partnership, and the nuanced approach needed as we advance UNDIS within the UN and beyond the UN. It is now my pleasure to welcome the Executive Director of UNFPA, the UN Population Fund, Ms. Diene Keita. You have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. It's a pleasure to be with you. Excellency Deputy Secretary General, Your Excellency, Madam Minister Chikunga, Minister of Women, Youth and Persons with Disability, Republic of South Africa, I'm with you, and Mexico for the football this afternoon. Your Excellency Ambassador of Lesotho, my dear brother, Excellency Madam Hiba Hagras, Special Rapporteur on the Right of Persons with Disability, It's such heartwarming to listen to you. And Mr. Juan Angel de Gouveia, Vice President of the International Disability Alliance. It was absolutely heartwarming to listen to you too. Member of the Diplomatic Corps, my esteemed colleagues, Marta Elena Lopez, it's a pleasure to be with you. And UN colleagues, dear friends, it is an honor to join you in reflecting on our shared journey toward disability inclusion with a focus on fast-tracking our progress. Our work at UNFPA is anchored in the principle of rights and choices for all. That means every person, everywhere, should be able to live free from harm and have full autonomy on their own body and life. Disability inclusion is a prerequisite for the full realization of human rights and is fundamental to the achieving of the Sustainable Development Goal and the Global Population and Development Agenda, the ICPD Program of Action. Yet, for too long, women and young persons with disability have faced intersecting forms of discrimination, navigating structural barriers, deeply rooted stigma, and systemic neglect. Historically, disability inclusion was often treated as well-intentioned yet secondary policy goal. The UN Disability Inclusion Strategy, UNDIS, has completely shifted that paradigm. When we look back at where we stood just a few short years ago, the impact of the UNDIS is undeniable. At UNFPA, it helped us introduce a rigorous, system-wide framework of accountability for disability inclusion into our operations and programming. With the guidance of UNDIS, we have integrated disability inclusion into our policies and performance, which has strengthened our human rights programming. Our flagship disability inclusion initiative, We Decide, has produced tangible results. Through the program, we have provided disability-inclusive sexual reproductive health and right and protection service in more than 80 countries. Between 2022 and 2025, these efforts have reached over 24 million women and youth with disabilities. UNFPA has also partnered with Women Enable International on the Our Bodies, Our Rights curriculum, which helps women and young people with disability learn more about their sexual and reproductive health and rights. These educational sessions have been a transformative catalytic change in countries such as Fiji, China, Botswana, Nigeria, Ecuador, and Panama. As one woman told us, this workshop has helped me gain knowledge about my disability rights and pass it on to members of my community. UNFPA is also driving effort to ensure that persons with disability are visible in data where they have long been unseen. Since we began mainstreaming disability into national data collection, the proportion of censuses globally that includes questions on disability has risen from 33% in 2018 to 73% in 2020. All our work on disability inclusion is guided by the UNFPA corporate strategy. We matter, we belong, we decide. A blueprint for bridging organizational gap and ensuring that persons with disability are active decision makers in everything we do. The implementation of this strategy is a priority for me personally, and I lead a Gender Equality and Inclusion Steering Committee that brings together the entire UNFPA executive leadership team to review progress twice annually. And since 1st December, our new New York office is fully accessible, and we are so proud about that. The results speak for themselves. When we first began reporting on UNDIS in 2019, UNFPA met or exceed 7 out of the 16 indicators. I'm proud to say that we now meet or exceed 13 out of the 16 indicators, underscoring our commitment to improvement. We are not taking this progress for granted. Today, UNDIS continues to drive learning and improvement in the development of guidance, disaggregated data, and the tools necessary to this work rigorously and systematically. Despite this achievement, we know that disability inclusion across the UN system is unfinished business. True systematic change takes time, and the gaps that remain demand our urgent attention. As we look ahead to the next 5 years, we cannot rest on our laurels. With that in mind, UNFPA is focusing on 3 critical shifts. First one, we will expand our growing expertise at the regional and country levels. True inclusion doesn't happen in headquarters. It happens on the ground. We will ensure our country offices have the tools and partnership to reach the most marginalized. Second, we will continue to improve our disaggregated data. If you are not counted, you are not seen. We will leverage digital technology and monitoring tools to ensure our programs are universally accessible. And our third and final goal is to foster leadership. We want to ensure that professionals with disability are not just in the room, but are leading teams, designing programs, and shaping the future of international development. Excellencies, dear colleagues and friends, the journey we started with UNDIS 7 years ago proved that the UN system binds itself to accountability. Real progress follows, and this is one of the achievements of the UN 80. With UNDIS 2.0 as our guiding light for the next 5 years, UNFPA recommits itself to breaking down every remaining barrier. We will continue to build an organization and a world where every person with disability can proudly say, I matter, I belong, I decide. I thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much for this inspiring speech and for reminding us that when the will is there, results come along. And we have seen the results across the UN system as UNDIS has been implemented, and remarkable progress at UNFPA. So thank you very much. Let me now welcome Assistant General for Human Resources, Ms. Marta Elena Lopez, from the UN Department of Management, Strategy, Policy and Compliance. ASG Lopez, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Excellencies, distinguished colleagues, representatives of organizations of persons with disabilities, ladies and gentlemen. I'm pleased to join you today for the launch of UNDIS 2.0 and for this important moment of renewed commitment to disability inclusion across the UN system. Since its launch, the United Nations Disability Inclusion Strategy has helped move disability inclusion from aspiration to action. It has strengthened accountability, shaped institutional practice, and given the UN system a framework to measure progress. But the evaluation of UNDIS also made one thing clear. There is progress, but it is not enough. The next phase requires greater ambition, clearer standards, stronger accountability, and a culture that enables consistent results across the UN system. That is why we welcome UNDIS 2.0. It raises our level of ambition and strengthens our collective approach. Most important, it makes clear that disability inclusion must be embedded in how the United Nations works, not treated as an add-on or an afterthought. For the Department of Management, Strategy, Policy and Compliance, this agenda is central to our mandate. DMSPC's responsibilities for internal policy, employment frameworks, reasonable accommodation, and capacity building are not just administrative functions. They are the levers that determine whether persons with disability can enter the organization, contribute fully, advance in their careers, and thrive. They also determine whether United Nations can credibly call itself an employer of choice for persons with disabilities. Within the Secretariat, we have continued to advance work in areas that matter directly to the everyday experience of personnel. This includes strengthening guidance on reasonable accommodation for managers and staff, supporting more consistent application of employment-related measures, and building capacity across entities. We are also working to ensure that disability inclusion is reflected in core human resources and management systems. At the system-wide level, we also recognize the important work being advanced through the High-Level Committee of Management. The HLCM has provided a critical platform for developing common approaches across the UN system, including on reasonable accommodation, accessibility, policy coherence, and shared standards. As we look ahead, our commitment is clear. We must continue working to make the United Nations an employer that attracts, recruits, retains, and advances persons with disabilities. We must continue to listen to persons with disability and their representative organizations as partner in sharing solutions. UNDIS 2.0 gives us the opportunity to move beyond progress toward deeper institutional reform. We should recognize what has been achieved while acknowledging how much more remains to be done. Our ambition is higher now, and rightly so. The task before us is to turn that ambition into lasting change across our policies, systems, and workplace culture. DMSPC remains fully committed to working with partners across the Secretariat and the wider United Nations system to support the implementation of UNDIS 2.0, strengthen accountability, and ensure that disability inclusion is embedded in how the organization delivers on its mandate. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Assistant Secretary General. I would like now to invite our co-sponsors, and before that, to thank them. And I would like to give the floor for you to share your interventions. And I call your name. Kindly press the speaker button as well on your microphone in front of you on the table. It is my privilege to welcome first Her Excellency Ms. Katja Perman, Ambassador for Human Rights of Finland. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Madam Moderator, and good afternoon, everyone. It's a great pleasure to be here, and thank you so much for organizing this very important side event. Excellencies, dear colleagues and friends, it's been encouraging to hear how the UN Disability Inclusion Strategy has translated principles into practice across different parts of the UN system. From Finland's perspective, the strategy has been an important driver of change. It has helped us move disability inclusion from commitments to implementation by making it more visible, more structured, and more measurable. Perhaps most importantly, it has begun to change how the UN works by embedding inclusion into what it does, rather than treating it as an add-on, as was also underlined by Assistant Secretary General Lopez. We believe that 2.0 phase should focus on strengthening accountability further, ensuring consistent implementation and linking inclusion clearly to results on the ground. Therefore, UNDIS 2.0 should continue its engagement with organizations of persons with disabilities. For Finland, one priority stands out, and that is the full integration of disability inclusion into the core functioning of the UN. This means that inclusion is reflected in planning, budgeting, programming, and reporting, not as a separate track, but as a standard way of working. For instance, when procurement processes are carried out, goods and services such as infrastructure, ICT, and communications must meet accessibility standards. It also means that UN communications are available in accessible formats, including sign language, captioning, and easy-to-read versions. When monitoring and evaluation frameworks are put in place, they need to track disability inclusion through specific indicators and disaggregated data. Dear colleagues, dear friends, we are all acutely aware of the current financial constraints. However, if we want UNDIS to be sustainable, it needs to be anchored more firmly within the UN structures and supported through predictable funding. This means, of course, through the UN regular budget. Let me conclude by underlining that UNDIS is a commitment. It's a commitment to equality and to the full realization of human rights. When we speak of leaving no one behind, let us truly honor its meaning by making UNDIS 2.0 count. Madam Moderator, let me also extend my warmest gratitude to the UNDIS team for all the excellent, superb work so far. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Excellency, and thank you for the support of Finland over the past years and your belief that change happens when member states mobilize and support. I will now give the floor to Mr. Stefan Pretterhofer, Deputy Permanent Representative of the Permanent Mission of Austria to the United Nations. You have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Moderator, Excellencies, distinguished colleagues, ladies and gentlemen. Austria is pleased to join this important event and thanks the Secretary General, the Kingdom of Lesotho, the Republic of South Africa, the Disability Inclusion Team, and all partners involved for their leadership in launching UNDIS 2.0. Today is an opportunity not only to celebrate progress, but also to renew our commitment to embedding disability inclusion across policies, programs, and operations of the United Nations. The title of today's event, Celebrating Progress, Accelerating Action, reflects precisely where we stand. We can take note of the significant progress achieved since the launch of UNDIS in 2019. The disability inclusion strategy has become a key driver of institutional change across the UN system. And it has helped translate the principles of the Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities into concrete action, strengthened accountability, and elevated disability inclusion as a system-wide priority. Yet the real measure of success will be our ability to accelerate implementation and deliver tangible improvements. So therefore, Austria welcomes the launch of UNDIS 2.0 and its ambition to accelerate implementation during the period 2026-2030. So we particularly value its stronger focus on measurable impact, accessibility data, accountability, and meaningful engagement. Disability inclusion is a prerequisite for effective and sustainable action across the UN system, whether in development, humanitarian action, peace building, or human rights. Our efforts can only be truly effective when persons with disabilities participate fully and equally. And we've heard this from previous speakers, and I think that's really an essential point. As we move closer to 2030, UNDIS 2.0 is a central driver of the UN system's continued transformation. Let us use this momentum to strengthen partnerships, share good practices, and accelerate action across the entire United Nations. As an incoming member of the Security Council, Austria will continue to promote disability inclusion across the UN system and also in this new format. And we stand ready to work with all member states and UN entities to make disability inclusion a lived reality. And I thank you, Madam Moderator.
Thank you to the Deputy Permanent Representative of Austria. And it is my pleasure to welcome Ms. Shu Ling, Director General of the Department of International Affairs of the China Disabled Persons Federation. You have the floor.
Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. On the occasion of the 20th anniversary of the UNCRPD, China is honored to co-sponsor this significant event and witness the launch of UNDIS 2.0. I'd like to express appreciation to the UN system and related member states for their active commitment and commend the transformative progress made under UNDIS over the past 6 years, which has set an excellent example for member states to implement the CRPD and the 2030 development agenda. As one of the first group of member states to advocate, join, and ratify the CRPD, China strongly supports and actively echoes the UNDIS vision on the full and complete realization of the human rights of all persons with disabilities. In parallel with UNDIS, during 2020 to 2025, China formulated and implemented a 5-year national plan to promote disability-inclusive development. We launched the accessibility law to promote barrier-free facilities, information, and services. 2 phases of 3-year campaign on the promotion of employment for people with disabilities were implemented. Special attention is given to women with disabilities. A project named the Beautiful Crafts Workshop is launched nationwide, where women with disabilities receive training and make a living through crafts making at home and in the community. You may have noticed the exhibition near the Vienna Cafe, where the exquisite products of the workshops are on show. People with disabilities are increasingly participating in political, economic, and social affairs. Nationwide, over 8,000 persons with disabilities, their family members, and supporters serve as deputies to the Congress and members of the political consultative bodies at various levels. We also develop close cooperation with UN agencies and the member states in this process. On behalf of 30 like-minded countries, China submitted a resolution titled Accessibility for All, Progress Made and the Challenge Ahead, which was adopted by the 57th session of the UN Human Rights Council. The China Disabled Persons Federation, together with UN ESCAP, UN Women, and UN FPA, launched an initiative to promote the empowerment and inclusion of women and girls with disabilities. On the same pace with UNDIS 2.0, the development plan for the course of persons with disabilities for the next 5 years will be officially released in China, hopefully next month, further promoting disability inclusion. We have just kicked off the 3rd National Sample Survey on disability so as to provide better reference for relevant policy making. We try to make full use of scientific and technological innovation for benefit of people with disabilities. And with that said, and as nothing about us without us goes, I'd like to invite my colleague, a very capable lady on wheelchair, Ms. Song Ge, to speak a few words.
Good afternoon, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. As many speakers said yesterday, the voice of persons with disabilities must be heard at the very beginning of the legislation. Over the past 5 years, my colleague and I have submitted suggestions for legislation for more than about 50 laws, such as ensuring children with disabilities can enter kindergarten and receive reasonable accommodations. I personally submit a proposal through the government website to suggest that accessible services should be provided to disabled visitors to the national park. Glad to know it was adopted. This is my first visit to UN. So beautiful, so inspiring. I hope that the UN can continue to take the leading role in promoting disability inclusion to make our world more beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your interventions. Now it is my pleasure to give the floor to Ms. Biblia González Ulate, Executive Director of the National Council for Persons with Disabilities of Costa Rica.
Excellencies, from Costa Rica, we wish to recognize and celebrate the advances in implementation of the Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities. Both the United Nations systems and the States of Paris have demonstrated a growing commitment to the promotion of inclusive policies, the streaming of normative framework, and the development of policies and programs that allow for attending in a real way to the needs of persons with disabilities. This progress reflects an increasingly solid understanding that inclusion is not an act of charity, but an imperative of human rights and a pillar of sustainable development. However, the change persists and is precisely in that context that we must look toward the future with determination. Our call is clear: advance toward an inclusive society with a special focus on the rights to autonomy of persons with disabilities. An autonomy that also requires accessible environments, inclusive educational systems, and coherent public policies that eliminate the structural barriers that still persist. In this way, the implementation of UNDIS 2.0 represents a strategic opportunity to advance toward concrete, measurable, and sustainable results centered on dignity, equality, and inclusion. This strategy allows for mainstream action into current policies to align the human rights approach and establish improvement plans in the areas with the greatest barriers in the exercise of these rights. Finally, we wish to express our gratitude to the United Nations system for its accompaniment in its strategy and recommendations, which have been fundamental for orienting two efforts. In this sense, we consider it the key that good practice be articulated with the resident coordination of the United Nations in the States Paris, so that they can support and work in an articulated manner with the institutions to translate global commitments in the frequent actions at national level. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. And as we have heard from this distinguished panel, these objectives are very ambitious. And the progress that we have achieved so far has been promising, has been a wake-up call for many of us to look at disability inclusion differently, to look at it with resolve and with a clear determination to change and to impact positively the reality of millions of people. So we appreciate the commitment, we appreciate your support, and we will, as the United Nations, work towards a UNDIS 2.0 that achieves its objectives. We've raised the bar higher, but I believe that we do have the capacity and the will to advance with your support. I would like now to bring the session to a close, but before that, it is my honor to welcome His Excellency Mr. Matete Nena, Permanent Representative of the Kingdom of Lesotho to the United Nations, to deliver the closing remarks. The floor is yours, Excellency.
Madam Chair, Deputy Secretary General, Excellencies, distinguished delegates. On behalf of the Kingdom of Lesotho, I extend sincere appreciation to all participants, partners, and co-organizers, in particular, the People's Republic of China, Finland, Austria, and Costa Rica, the United Nations system, and the International Disability Alliance for an engaging and forward-looking dialogue. As we conclude this important side event, we reflect with both pride and purpose on the journey of the United Nations Disability Inclusion Strategy. Over the past 6 years, UNDIS has catalyzed meaningful transformation across the United Nations system, embedding disability inclusion more firmly in policies, programs, and operations, and strengthening accountability to ensure that no one is left behind. Today's discussions have reaffirmed that progress is not only possible, but it is already happening. Yet, we have also been reminded that inclusion must be deepened, accelerated, and sustained. Persistent gaps in implementation, resource allocation, accessibility, and data continue to challenge our collective ambition. It is precisely for this reason that UNDIS 2.0 is both timely and necessary. It represents a renewed commitment to results. It offers a sharper strategic vision, enhanced accountability mechanisms, and a deliberate focus on country-level impact. We particularly welcome its emphasis on disability data and evidence, digital accessibility, and strengthened resource tracking as critical enablers for informed decision-making and measurable progress. For Lesotho, disability inclusion remains central to our national development agenda and our implementation of the Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities. We recognize that inclusive development is not only an optional add-on, it is a prerequisite for equitable and sustained progress. In this regard, UNDIS 2.0 provides a valuable framework to support member states in translating global commitments into tangible outcomes for persons with disabilities. Excellencies, as we commemorate 20 years of the CRPD, this moment calls for renewed ambition. We must move beyond commitments to concrete actions that transform lives. This requires strengthening partnerships, particularly with organizations of persons with disabilities, whose voices, leadership, and lived experiences are indispensable to advancing meaningful inclusion. We must also ensure that disability inclusion remains integrated across all pillars of the United Nations work on human rights, development, humanitarian action, and peace and security. In a rapidly changing world, marked by multiple and intersecting challenges, our responses must be inclusive in design. Lesotho therefore calls for the following actions. 1, accelerated implementation of UNDIS 2.0 across all UN entities with a focus on measurable country-level results. 2, sustained investment in disability-inclusive policies, programs, and systems. 3, strengthened partnerships with organizations of persons with disabilities at all levels. 4, enhanced data systems to inform evidence-based policymaking. And 5, continued accountability, ensuring that commitments translate into real change in the lives of persons living with disabilities. In closing, let us reaffirm our shared responsibility to uphold the principles of dignity, equality, and non-discrimination enshrined in the United Nations Charter and the CRPD. Let UNDIS 2.0 serve not only as a strategy, but as a catalyst for transformation, driving us towards a more inclusive, equitable, and just world for all. I thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Ambassador. And this brings our session to an official close, but please allow me to extend my deepest gratitude to all of you for your presence, for your support, co-organizers, co-sponsors, the interpreters, the captioners. Thank you for joining us today, both here and online. Thank you for the shared commitment to advancing disability inclusion. And I would like to just mention this very small flyer, which summarizes what UNDIS 2.0 is about. It is also my turn to express my deep appreciation to the very small team at the Executive Office of the Secretary General that has made this possible, that has consulted with thousands of people to make sure that the process of upgrading UNDIS to UNDIS 2.0 has been as consultative and inclusive as possible. We have a small, humble reception and refreshments outside, which we invite you to join us for. And we thank you again for your attention and for being with us today.